Good evening, students. Welcome back to this discussion on audit. In the previous sessions, we have discussed about chapter 1, which is all about nature, understanding, objectives of the audit. So today we plan to continue with our discussion on the same chapter. Yeah, hopefully we should be able to wrap up this chapter, but let's see as to how the things progress. All right, so in the previous session, we started discussion around the assurance engagements. And in relation to assurance engagements, we were discussing about those type of engagements which are other than statutory audit. Okay, which we can also say that which are other than those wherein reasonable assurance is not provided, or we can say wherein the procedures are performed on the information which is other than historical information. So before I really get on to this, because it's a more of a recap and sort of revision for us, can you just quickly tell me that in relation to review, I'm not talking about audit, in relation to review. So that means I'm just talking about this type of assurance engagement right now. Okay. So now when it comes to a review, which information becomes a subject to the procedures of the practitioner, or you can say the auditor? Yes, over to you. What do you think that when it comes to review, which information becomes the subject matter? Means which information will be required to be checked? Okay, great. So Pranav is saying historical financial information. Very good. So now, as around audit, as well as around review, we discussed that the subject matter happens to be the historical financial information. Yes or no? So that was all about historical financial information. Means historical financial information is required to be checked. Okay, but we also discussed that there could be certain engagements which are other than audit, which are other than review, and which also require procedures in relation to checking or examination of some information. And what information will that be? That will be other than historical financial information. Other than historical financial information. And in relation to such type of engagements, what can be the type of that information which will become subject to review? Yeah, so that could be the forecasts, that could be operations in relation to the controls. Okay, yeah, so all of these things can also become subject to checking, and the practitioner who will be checking this information, that is what you call as the one who is examining, or you can say the one who is equivalent to the auditor. Yeah, because in case of auditor, audits, similarly in case of practitioner will form these procedures. So let us quickly do a recap in terms of some of the points which are related to this reasonable assurance, which is about audit, limited assurance, which is about review. Now, when it comes to an audit, we discussed that reasonable assurance is provided, which is a high level of assurance. But when it comes to a review, limited assurance is provided. Limited assurance is provided, which is a low level of assurance. Okay, so this is low level of assurance. In respect of review, we discussed that procedures are limited as compared to audit, because when it comes to an audit, full-blown audit procedures are required to be performed. But when it comes to a review, fewer procedures are required to be performed. Okay. Now, when it comes to a review, the auditor will provide conclusions. And on the basis of conclusions, what is it that the auditor will do? Auditor will express an opinion. Auditor will express an opinion. But when it comes to a review, auditor will involve the evidence, but the conclusions that he'll draw will also be limited. That's why he'll not be providing that opinion that the financial statements or the financial information provide a true and fair view. Okay, so it's all about negative assurance in a way. Yeah. Now, quickly, if we talk about some of the examples as around these assurance engagements. Now, what could be the examples? One, which we have been discussing quite a lot, that is audit of financial statements. And what do you call this audit of financial statements as? Quickly, can you please tell me what is the technical term that you'll use for audit of financial statements? Yes, over to you, everyone. Tell me that audit of financial statements is technically called as what? Okay, Niketana is saying testing of details. Saundarya is saying audit. Yes, of course, it's an audit, but what do you call it as? So the technical term that you assign. Great. So Vaishnavi is saying statutory audit. Yes, very good. So this is what you call as statutory audit. Okay, so this is what you call as statutory audit. Yeah. When it comes to a review, what do you call it as? Obviously, a review. Yeah. But this is also an example of assurance engagement because we are discussing the examples of assurance engagements wherein audit can also come, limited review can also come, or you can say review can also come, and those other assurance engagements can also come. Now, what could be the other assurance engagements? Examination of prospective financial information. Yeah, wherein we provide assurance regarding what? Regarding reasonability of assumptions, on the basis of which that prospective financial information is prepared, and that is what you call as projections or anything which is related to that. Okay, similarly, if the practitioner is working on testing of, or you can say checking of, or you can say examination of controls which are operating in an organization, okay, it's a separate, you can say, engagement altogether. In such a case, okay, so in such a case, what is it that the practitioner is trying to do? Practitioner is trying to provide assurance regarding what? Design and operation of controls. Regarding design and operation of controls. Yeah, clear on this? Any questions so far? Because I understand that you had a lot of questions around some of these things that we were discussing. And any questions if you have around this? I can see this question coming from Srinivasan. He is asking, sir, is the statutory auditor qualified to audit internal control even though it's an assurance engagement? Yes. See, who can be a statutory auditor? Chartered accountant. Yes or no? Chartered accountant. So we are just trying to check that is the chartered accountant qualified to perform testing of internal controls or not. Now you can just think about it. All of you are currently reading this subject. Yes, yes or no? And in this subject, you are also going to discuss about testing of internal controls, around understanding of internal controls. In fact, at higher level, you will be getting deep dive into this. So that's why as a chartered accountant, you will always be competent, or you can say equipped with that sort of skill set which is required for performing those procedures. Okay. Yes. Before I move further, if you have any questions, any doubts around this, quickly, any questions over here? Any questions, any doubts? Okay, so I think Vijay Lakshmi is asking, sir, please explain fourth one. Sure. Now, fourth one is asking about, so Vijay Lakshmi is saying that please repeat this fourth one, this one. Okay. Now, in the fourth one, the procedures are required to be performed on controls. Controls which are operating in an organization. Okay. Now, as around these controls, as around these testing of controls, there is going to be a detailed discussion as you move further in respect of the sessions that you are going to have and some of the topics that you are going to cover slightly later. But quickly touching upon these controls. So over here, we are talking about controls which are there in the organization. Every organization will have some controls. Yes or no? Now, for various activities which the organization will be having, say for example, anything which is related to purchase, anything which is related to sale, anything which is related to payment, organization will have some controls. Yeah. So if let's suppose a third party has been engaged, why? Because the third party is required to test, you can say examine those controls. Okay. And we are talking about anything which is other than statutory audit. In such a case, auditor will be, that practitioner will be required to provide a report once that procedure is completed, once that engagement is completed. Yeah. So in such a case, which type of engagement will that be? Obviously, assurance engagement. Why? Because the moment you say that a report is required to be provided, okay, which is something in the nature of assurance, it will become assurance. Now, the point is that when the auditor will be checking this, examining this, on what he is providing the assurance, he is providing the assurance around those controls. Means how those controls have been designed. Okay, which is all about structure of controls, means how those controls were set up. Secondly, whether those controls are operating effectively or not, means maybe a manual has been created. Okay, maybe those controls have been written down that this is how control should happen, this is how control should flow. But let's suppose if they are not operating in an effective manner. Yeah. Now, some of you may be thinking that, sir, please give some examples. Sure. So let's take an example of this control. Okay. And we'll just try to discuss this with the help of one particular case scenario as well. Okay. So I'll just pick up one small sort of case scenario. Let's suppose there is a company ABC Limited. Yeah. Now, in this company, there is an activity. What is the activity? Payments are required to be made. Okay. So it's an activity. Payments are required to be made. Now, for these payments to be made, an organization will have a control. Now, what could be control? That the access to the bank will not be available to each and every employee. Yes or no? Yeah. So that means for making the payments, access is given, say, only to 2 employees. Or in other words, you can say only those 2 employees are authorized to make any payment. Yeah. Now, by doing this, what is it that the organization is trying to do? They are trying to restrict this activity to limited persons. So that each and every employee, so let's suppose organization has got 100 employees. So each and every employee will not make the payment. Okay. This is what you call as a kind of control. Now, in relation to this control, maybe that organization has written down its policy manual, its control manual, its SOPs, standard operating procedures. Let's suppose entity has created a manual and they have defined that only 2 employees, say from the finance department, will be given the access to make the payments. Now, this is what you call as a design. What do you call it as? This is a design. Second, now, it may happen that even though design is there, manual is there, but actually 4 persons are making the payment. Okay. Or maybe 5 persons are making the payment, even though they are not authorized, but they are making the payments. So in such a case, what do you call it as? You will say that even though control design is in place, but it's not operating effectively. Yeah, understood the meaning of control and what is it that you are required to check, and what do you mean by design and the operating effectiveness also? Clear on this? Yeah, great. All right. So then this question comes from Srinivasan. He's asking, so statutory auditor cannot give suggestions to improve internal control, right? No, of course, he can give suggestions. There is absolutely no problem in doing that. Okay. Then Avinash is asking, sir, internal audit is an assurance engagement? Not really. See, this is more of advisory in nature. Yeah. Which is more of a management function, wherein management is required to do something and they have engaged, you can say, a third party consultant. Or many times they are also doing this in-house. Okay. That is not something which will fall within this umbrella of assurance engagements that we have been discussing. All right. Yeah. Everyone clear on this? Okay, great. So let me just go back to the presentation and we'll just pick up this example. Okay, so now this is an example for you to answer. Yeah. Management of Exotic Tours and Travels Limited requests its auditors. Now, who are the auditors? Raja and Company. Okay, so who is the company? Exotic Tours and Travels Private Limited. Sorry, Limited. And they have requested the auditors to provide an assurance report on the financial information for the first quarter of an year by skipping required detailed procedures. So the management is saying that please skip detailed procedures. Okay. And provide the assurance report. Okay. So it doesn't say audit report, it says assurance report. Now, please remember, it's an assurance report which has been asked from the person. Now, we have got these questions for you. Can this firm, Raja and Company, provide such a report? Question number one. If yes, what would be the nature of report? Would it be necessary for them to obtain sufficient appropriate evidence in such a case? Now, before you really get on to the answer, let me just also discuss this sufficient appropriate evidence. Okay, let's spend some time on this and then we'll come back to this question. What is evidence and what do you mean by sufficient appropriate evidence? All right, so let's go back again to one case scenario. Okay, and over there we'll just try to understand what is evidence. So let's suppose there is a company PQR Limited. Okay, for which now I'm not talking about the case scenario that we have been discussing. I'm just talking about any other situation. So let's suppose for this company, audit has been going on. By audit, we mean to say audit of financial statements is going on. Now, in such a case, if the auditor is checking the invoices, contracts, yeah, or let's suppose vouchers, okay, or say various other documents. Now, all of these supporting documents, now these are what supporting documents. Why do you call it as supporting documents? Because these documents are supporting the financial information which lies in these financial statements. Okay, so these documents are supporting this information. Why? Because on the basis of all of these documents, in financial information, financial data will be gathered, which will be then accounted for. Correct? Now, for the audit purposes, when you ask for these information, ask for these supporting documents, what do you call it as technically? This is what you call as evidence. Okay, or you can say proof, or you can say supporting documents. So what is evidence? Evidence, you can say, is the information, is the detail, is a document which helps the auditor in examining the data, in checking the detail, in verification of any information. So understood the meaning of evidence? Yeah. Now, the question is that this evidence should be sufficient as well as appropriate. Now, what do you mean by sufficient? So let's try to understand that. Okay, so now we are talking about evidence. Okay, and we are saying that this should be sufficient and appropriate. Sufficient, we can say, is more of quantitative in nature. So we are talking about, in a way, quantity here. And appropriate, we can say, is more of qualitative in nature. So we are talking about quality here. So means when you will perform the checking, so you will ensure that sufficient checking has been performed, means required number of data has been picked up, and you will also check that the information which has been picked up for checking serves the audit purpose. Okay, so let's try to understand both these with the help of an example. Say there is a population of 100 items, out of which you are checking 15 items. So in this case, this 15 number is what? This reflects the sufficiency. Means, is that sample which you have collected for checking sufficient or not? Means we are talking about more of quantitative detail. Okay. On the other hand, if let's suppose you have a population wherein top 5 items, let's suppose in a company there are 100 sales transactions. Okay, during the year there were 100 sales transactions. And we understand that top 5 transactions, okay, top 5 transactions comprise 40% of the sales amount. Okay, we are saying top 5 transactions comprise 40% of the sales amount. So when you will pick up the sample out of 100, would you want to include these 5 transactions or not? Over to you. Yes or no? Sai Charan is saying yes. Yeah. Pavan is saying yes. Great. Yeah. Hardik is also saying yes. Why? Because qualitatively, when you look at the sample, you will say that these 5 transactions will effectively cover a significant part of the sales amount. So that's why it should be picked up. Okay. So that is what you call as qualitative aspects. So when it comes to the checking, when it comes to obtaining the evidence, both the things are required to be looked at. What are both the things? Sufficiency as well as appropriateness. Okay. Now again, this is something which we are going to discuss in more detail. But as of now, idea was to just give you a perspective as to what do you mean by sufficient appropriate audit evidence. Okay. Now, with this understanding, I can just come back to this question. Okay. So now please remember, when you will answer this question, you will have to answer with the reasoning. So the question is, can Raja and company provide this report? If yes, what will be the nature? And will it be necessary for this firm to obtain sufficient appropriate evidence? Why is this question asked? Now, this is very, very important because the management has requested the auditor to skip required detailed procedures. Very, very important point. Huh? Now, within this, or you can say, keeping this understanding with you quickly, I'll just go to your solution now. Okay, Pranav is saying yes, they can. It would be a review. Yes, it would be necessary for them to obtain sufficient appropriate evidence. Okay, Satakshi is saying it's a review. However, they will need to obtain the evidence. Rachna is saying yes, they can provide. It should be called as a review. I'm just hoping that all of you are answering. You are not looking at the solution. Yeah, please make sure that you are answering this on your own. Huh? Arshdeep is saying yes, it's a review. Venkatesh has got the same answer. Muskan is also saying yes. Okay, great. It's good to see that everyone is saying yes. Okay, Bhanushri is saying yes, it's a review. Hasi is saying yes, nature is review based on the limited details. They will have to do this. Okay, great. Now, let's get on to the solution. I could see a lot of responses coming around this. I think Avinash also tried to answer this. Is it? Okay, great. Now, in this case, the important part was that detailed procedures have not been asked to perform. Yeah. The moment you say that detailed procedures will not be performed, so can it remain an audit? Tell me. If the detailed procedures are not performed, Rishita is saying no, it's not possible, sir. Yes. So that's why it cannot be an audit. Yeah, but because limited procedures are performed, so that's why it will become a review. But why do we call it as a review? Why not other assurance engagement? Because it's performed on historical financial information. Understood? Yeah. But another very, very important point, even though procedures are limited, they are not detailed, but still procedures will have to be performed. Procedures will have to be performed necessarily. So that's why sufficient appropriate evidence in relation to review will necessarily be required. So we cannot say that no, now the sufficient appropriate evidence will not be required. So that has to be given, but with the context of review. Okay, clear on this? I can also see some of the responses from Narendra now. Great. Yes. Any questions? I'm just hoping everyone is clear on this. Yeah. All right. Great. So let's move further now. Now, as around the auditor, let's try to understand what should be the quality of an auditor. See, I think as around the audit, all of these discussions that we have had, one thing that we have understood is that audit requires great deal of knowledge. Yes or no? Yeah. It requires an understanding. It requires person who can handle a team. Why? Because there will be an engagement team. There will be people who will be going on the audit. So somebody will need to handle that team. Plus, you also need to have a skill. Why? Skill in relation to dealing with people. Why? Because it's not only your team that you are going to handle as an auditor, but you are also going to handle the client. So client personnel, because you will have to obtain information from them. You will have to obtain data from them. Yeah. So some of the qualities which are important on the part of the auditor is tact, caution, firmness, good temper, integrity. Integrity, we discussed, huh? Very, very important on the part of the auditor. Discretion. Okay. So judgment, patience. Why? Because dealing with people is required. Timelines are there. Clear headedness, reliability. All of these are very, very important qualities which an auditor needs to possess. And the topmost feature, or you can say the quality which the auditor has to possess, is about the independence. Okay, we have discussed independence means he has to stay away from any sort of bias, away from any sort of pressure, away from any sort of threat. Okay, only then he will be able to carry out his task in a proper manner. Okay, yeah. So all of these things become extremely important. Okay, great. Narendra is saying, sir, what is tact? See, tact means ways through which you can get your job done. Okay, let's suppose you understand that for dealing with a client, you just can't keep pushing him. Okay, maybe let's suppose you need to spend some time. Say you need to interact with him, you need to have a good cordial relation with him, because you understand if you go to that particular client and let's suppose if you are maintaining a good relation, then he is easily providing you the information. So that is what you call as a tact. Okay, you need to know the ways as to how you can extract the evidence, how you can extract the information. Now you have a question, sir, why do we need to be tactful? Why do we need to do this? Because it's our right. As an auditor, we need to get this, and it's the duty of the client to provide. You are right. But please understand that audit is all about examination, all about checking. Okay, let's suppose if you have performed some work and you know somebody is going to come and check, so you may have a you may be scared that I may have made some mistakes. Maybe you are not doing those mistakes intentionally, but still you may be worried. You may be thinking that what if some errors are pointed out? So that's why you may want to hide some information. You may not want to disclose everything. Yeah. So that is where all of these things become important. Clear on this? Narendra is saying, is it the same as the management? I think Narendra, we just discussed this. Yeah. All right. So then I can see some of these questions coming from Adishri, Chetan, Arup. So they are saying, what is quotient? See, quotient is all about, you know, dealing with the client personnel. When you are dealing with the client personnel, you need to take care as around the information that you are handling. Confidentiality again becomes important. So all of these things you need to take care of. Then you are asking what is integrity. So integrity means being honest. Yeah. So it's something which you call as a situation wherein you will be right in terms of whatever is required to be done, or you can say you will do the things in a rightful manner. Okay, understood? Yeah. Then I can see this query coming from Arup. Arup is saying, sir, what is the meaning of projections? See, Arup, when you get into future events, so let's suppose for a company, if you are required to estimate that what is going to be the revenue of this company for next 5 years. Okay. So now you are getting onto the financial data for the future period. So you are getting into the future events. So that is what you call as a projection. So I can say this is an example of projection. Okay. Yeah. Then I think a lot of you are asking about this question. Okay. In fact, there are a couple of things you are asking: discretion and what do you mean by clear headed? Okay, great. See, let's try to understand about clear headed. What do you mean by clear headed? See, auditor has to be very, very clear in terms of what he is required to do, or what does he want to do. What is the objective? If let's suppose he wants to test something, why does he want to test something? What is the objective behind this? Yeah. Similarly, if we talk about, say, getting into a particular project, if let's suppose you are not clear as to what is required to be done, how that is required to be done, or if let's suppose if you are taking some steps, you are performing something, but you are not clear as to what is going to be the outcome of that. So what will happen? That project may or may not work. Outcome may or may not be desirable. Yes or no? Yeah. So that's why it's something which is required on the part of the auditor. See, discretion is all about getting into a situation wherein some of the decisions are required to be taken. Okay. So if the decisions are required to be taken, so again, all of these things are interlinked, wherein auditor has to be clear in terms of what is it that he'll do, how is that required to be done. All right. Yeah. Okay, so Narendra is asking, sir, in qualities, what is industry? See, industry is, I think, in relation to industry, it's about the understanding of the industry. It's about the knowledge. So the auditor needs to have a knowledge of that particular industry for which he is going to perform the audit, or let's say he is required to perform the required procedures. Okay, clear? I'm just hoping I'm through with your queries now. Okay, so Tambeshwari is saying, sir, what is temper? Temper, again, I would say the same thing, that it's all about having a firm head or a clear mind. Means auditor cannot lose his temper. Have you heard this? Don't lose your temper. So that term, do you understand? So it's about a quality of dealing with people. Why? Because as an auditor, he'll have a team that will work with him. Plus, he will also be interacting with the client personnel. Okay, so all of these human qualities, one can say, are important on the part of the auditor. Only then this task can be performed in an appropriate manner. Clear? Yeah? All right, so we can move further then. Karan, I think we just discussed this. Okay, so I think we just discussed this. Okay, great. All right, so let's move further now. Now, we will just briefly touch upon some of the technical things. So don't worry, we'll not become too technical in terms of our discussion. Idea is to just give you an insight as around this audit as to, what are the tools. Yes, you heard it right. What are the tools which are available to an auditor, to the one who is performing a review, or you can say to a practitioner. Okay. Now, before I really get on to this, do you all understand about accounting standards? I'm sure everybody will know about accounting standards. Yeah, do you all know about accounting standards? Yes. So can you tell me what is an accounting standard? I'm not asking about an example. What is an accounting standard? Yes, quickly. Yeah, so I can see a lot of yes. So Preeti, Hardik, Pallavi. Yeah. So can you tell me why are they in existence? What do you really mean by them? Quickly, yeah. What do you really mean by them? Afzal is saying standards in which accounting has to be done. Or you can say it's all about putting across a standard using which some accounting will be done. Yes or no? So now, similarly, let me just get into one more situation to discuss this. Okay, exactly similar to the accounting standards, you have also got auditing standards. Auditing standards. Now, what is the role of a standard? See, if a standard is not available, so I'm just talking about accounting standard for the time being. See, if let's suppose if the standard is not available, so what will happen? Any entity, any company, any person may do the accounting as per their whims and fancies. Means whichever way they like, whatever they understand, they may follow that and do the accounting. But what if something is specified that this is how accounting is required to be done? Okay, that becomes a norm, or you can say that is what you call as a standard. Understood? Similarly, for audit purposes, we have got standards. What do you mean by standard? That for auditing, for examining, for checking, for performing assurance engagements, standards have been specified. Okay, and they deal with various areas. Okay, so if let's suppose financial statements are required to be audited, then you have got standards in place. Okay, using those standards, audit is required to be performed. Means every auditor in such a scenario will be required to make sure that he is following those auditing standards. Okay, so we are talking about, say, audit of financial statements. Now let's suppose in this case, say audit of financial statements is going on. Say there is a firm, Ram and Company. Now Ram and Company decides that they will not check payroll. Okay, so they have decided to skip payroll. Okay, so this is what they have decided. If the standards are in place, okay, which mandate or which require Ram and Company to make sure that procedures even on payroll are performed, then what will happen? Ram and Company will not be able to skip this. Yeah. So you can say that all of these things will become standardized, will become structured, and thereby quality will be ensured. Why? Project or the engagement to the desired level of quality. Okay. Yeah. So that is what you understand about auditing standards, or you can say engagement standards. Yeah. So as we discussed that in respect of various areas, we have got different standards in place. Okay. So we'll be taking the examples of some of those standards now, just to give you an insight, as to what all those standards are, what are those areas with which they will be dealing with. Okay, but before that, I can understand you have got some questions. All right, so I think Hardik has a question. Yes, Hardik, please go ahead with your query. I think you want to ask something. Hardik, please go ahead.
Sir, good morning, sir.
Yes.
Sir, good evening, sir.
No worries.
Sir, in the qualities of auditor, there is a line, sir, which is saying that an exhaustive knowledge of accounting in all its branches is a sign to a non of the practice of auditing. Sir, can you please explain this line?
Sure. Hardik, let's do one thing. Let's park this for some time. Okay,
Okay,
because
sir.
currently we are talking about these standards. If you have anything specific on this, let's talk about it. I'll come back to your query maybe towards the end of this session, or maybe
Okay,
when
sir.
we take a break. I'll come back to
Okay,
your
sir.
query. Okay.
Okay,
So
sir.
if you
Thank
have
you, sir.
anything specific to this standard, okay, which we have been discussing right now, yes, you can just go ahead with your query. Okay, so I
No,
can
sir,
see
this looks okay.
no. Okay, no worries. Anyone else who has got a query? Uh, Avinash is saying, sir, standards issued by ICAI for reporting and presentation of financial information. Yes, exactly. So that is what we are also discussing over here. Okay. Then Srinivasan is asking, sir, if possible. Oh, so I think he's asking about some of the questions. Anyways, we have been discussing that. Then Ranjita is saying that it's based on accounts process. Not really, because we are talking about audit process. We are not talking about accounting process. Okay. Let me just look at some more queries around this. Sai Charan is saying, so standards are prescribed by whom? See, all of these standards are the one which are drafted, which are finalized by ICAI, but they have also been notified by MC. Okay, so if you look at the requirements of Companies Act, so Companies Act mandates usage of these auditing standards. Yeah, in respect of companies, but in respect of non-corporates, of course, because these have been issued by ICAI, so that's why they are mandatory. Krishna is asking, sir, can errors happen in payroll affect the financial statements? Why not? Yeah, because financial statements comprise of a lot of things. They comprise of a lot of things, and one of those things happen to be the payroll. So if there are errors in the payroll, so will that have an impact on the financial statements or not? Of course, yes. Yeah, clear on this? All right, so let me just look at some of the standards now. Now there are again some categories of the standards. So let's talk about these categories of the standards. Now, in relation to audit of historical financial information, there are various standards which have been issued. And because this is all about audit, so that's why what will you call the standards as auditing standards, which in a very popular manner, or you can say in abbreviated form, they are also called as essays. Essays means auditing standards, means you have got standards on auditing. Okay. Similarly, we discussed about review engagement. Yeah. So wherein we discussed that instead of audit, a company may want to get the review done, wherein limited procedures will be performed. Yeah. Now for those types of reviews, there again, some standards are available. So that's why those standards are called as standards on review engagements. So the one which is there on audit, you will call it as auditing standards. One which are on review, you will call it as standards on review engagements. Similarly, there could be other assurance engagements. Yeah, we discussed, for example, if there is a checking of, if there is a checking of financial information, which is all about projections, or if there is checking of controls, all of those sort of assurance engagements. So for that, you have got standards on assurance engagements. Okay, so that's the third category of standards. Fourth, you have got standards on related services. I'll come to this fourth point slightly later. Let's discuss about these first three first of all, because these three we have also discussed. We have discussed audit, we have discussed review, we have also discussed other assurance engagement. So let's talk about these three. Okay. Now, in relation to standards on auditing, what are some of the areas over which standards are available? Now, I'm just trying to give you some examples. Okay, so you can just say that these are the examples. Now, what is an example? Objectives of the audit. In fact, the topic that we have been discussing right now. Okay, this chapter 1. Yeah, where does it come from? You can say some of the requirements related to SA 200. So this is the numbering. SA 200 means auditing standard number 200. Okay, which talks about overall objectives of the independent auditor and conduct of audit in accordance with auditing standard. Another example, audit documentation. On audit documentation, you have got another auditing standard, SA 230. Yeah. On audit evidence, you remember we discussed about audit evidence? Yeah. Though we briefly discussed about auditing evidence, but on this particular topic, there is a detailed auditing standard available. SA 500. Okay, which deals with, which explains, which guides you as to about the audit evidence. Similarly, an auditor is required to provide a report. Yes or no? We all understand that an auditor is required to provide a report. Now, how should that report be provided? What should be the framework? Okay. What are going to be the elements of those audit reports? So you got a lot of auditing standards on that. One of them happens to be SA 700. Now, these are only examples. Huh? We have already discussed as to what is the objective of auditing standard. Auditing standard is all about ensuring that you have got same level. Okay, there is standardization in terms of how an information is checked. Okay, so that high quality is ensured through the outcome of that particular procedure, which is all about audit procedure. Okay, clear on this? Any questions that you have around the auditing standards? Yeah, clear on this? Rishita is saying, sir, are we supposed to memorize all these standards? No, don't worry. Yeah. Okay, Hardik is saying, sir, auditing standards come into force in consultation of NAFRA or MC. See, once something goes through NAFRA, then its final approval is something which comes from MCA. Okay, so all of these things are eventually approved by MC. Okay. Okay, Arup is saying, sir, essays are guideline or policy or principle. I would say all three. Yeah, they cover all three. They will provide you detailed insights in relation to that particular area as to how the work is required to be performed. Yeah, so it will cover all these three which you have been asking. Yeah, Srinivasan is asking, sir, can you please explain elements of an assurance engagement? I'll get to that. Okay. So in some time, I'll get to that. Yeah. So everyone clear so far as around the auditing standards? Yeah. Hope you have understood what do you mean by auditing standard, the areas which are covered by auditing standards. Yeah. Exactly similar to what you find in case of accounting standard. You have got standards on auditing or auditing standards. Yeah. And exactly similar to auditing standards. Now, the moment the scope is changed from audit to review, then what did we say? That now because audit is not being performed, so can you apply the standards on auditing? No. So which standards you will apply? You will apply the standards on review. Standards on review, which are very commonly called as SREs. SREs. Some of the examples which you can look at. SRE 2400, which deals with those engagements wherein historical financial statements are required to be reviewed. Or SRE 2410, which deals with those engagements wherein interim financial information is required to be reviewed. Okay, so let's try to understand about this. Let's take an example to discuss this. Okay, something which you very commonly get to see. See, if you remember, we discussed about listed companies. Okay, so say Anuj Limited. Okay, Anuj Limited is a listed company. It's a listed company. Yeah. Now, this company, let's suppose, has prepared its financial information for the period ended September 30, 2024. Okay. Now, for this half year, the information which is prepared, what do you call it as? Tell me. When you prepare the information for less than 1 year, what do you call it as? Over to you, quickly, everyone. What do you call it as? Interim. Interim. Yes or no? Yeah. So I'm not talking about audit or the review. I'm just talking about the information. So what do you call it as? Interim. Yeah. Now for this interim financial information, if let's suppose management says audit will not be performed, management says no, we don't want audit to be performed. Instead, what do they want? They want a review to be performed. They want a review to be performed. So in such a case, what will happen? You will go and refer SRE. You will go and refer SRE, means standard on review engagement is something you will refer. Okay, which will guide you, which will provide you the details as to what all things are required to be covered over. Clear? Everyone? Yeah? Everyone clear on this? Any questions so far? Any questions, any doubts related to this? If you have, no? Okay, great. So if you are clear, then I think we can just move on to the next item. Now, exactly similar to SRE, what is going to be the next thing? Next thing is about standard on assurance engagements. Now we have discussed that it is not necessary that every time an audit will be required or a review will be required. What may happen is, say, a company has got prospective financial information and its checking is required. Yeah, prospective financial information was all about projections. Its checking is required. Now, if its checking will be required, so in fact, forget about the scope of the management. Can you go and audit this, review this? So even if you do that, what do you call it as? You will call it as other assurance engagement, for which standards are also separate. Why these are separate? Because you have questions. Why these are separate? Because this is a separate thing. This is a different thing. Yes or no? This is not really audit. This is not really a review. This is something else. So that's why for every area, like for accounting standards, for every area you have a separate accounting standard or not? Tell me. Yes or no? Yeah. So can you have the same standard for PPE, for revenue, for provisions? Answer is no. So I saying no, sir. That's not possible. So same way, when the areas are different, your procedures are going to be different, your approach is going to be different. So that's why you have got different standards in place. Okay. So now, because it's all about other assurance engagements, So that's why you will have other auditing standards also, or you can say other standards also. So here again, we have got a couple of examples. Okay. Clear on this? Yeah. Now, great. So moving on to the next part. See, so far we have discussed three types of things. Now, what I'm going to discuss with you is a fourth type of engagement. Okay. So you may be thinking, sir, how many types of engagements are possible? There are lots of types. And it's good. The more and more number of types are there, it's good. Why? Because your scope will vary, your scope will increase. There are a lot of things you can do. So tomorrow, when you get into this profession, so you should have a lot of things to be done. Yes or no? Now, We discussed audit. That was one type of engagement. We discussed review. That was another type of engagement. Then we discussed other assurance. That was again another type of engagement. Now, in a similar manner, there could also be another type of engagement. Okay, there could also be another type of engagement, which is called as AUP. AUP means agreed upon procedures. AUP. Okay. Now, let's try to understand this. Okay. And for understanding this, in fact, I'll have to ask questions from you. Yeah. So I'm just hoping everyone is now sort of having a clear understanding about first three types. Let's suppose if you are the auditor of a company. Okay. Now I have a question for you. Let's suppose if you are the auditor of a company and I am the management of the company. Okay, you are the auditor, I am the management. Fine. Let's suppose if I ask you to perform some specified procedures. Let's suppose you are the auditor, you are going to audit my financial statements. And I'm saying that during this year, please check only revenue. Maybe if you want, you can also check PP. So I'm just saying, in fact, I'm asking you to perform procedures only on two things, revenue and PPE. Okay, you will not do anything. You will do only these two things. In fact, the procedures that you are going to perform, I'll let you know. Okay, so I, as the management, is saying that I'll let you know which procedures you will perform. There are only two areas on which you can perform the procedures, but only those procedures will be performed which I'll tell you. Other than that, you cannot apply any of your procedures. Okay, in such a case, what do you think will be your thought process? Yes. Any comments around this? Hardik is saying, sir, we would want to call it as a SRE. Why SRE? Pallavi is saying, sir, how is it possible? Because it will affect the independence. Pranav is saying, sir, scope is very limited. Hardik is saying scope is limited, but if the scope is limited, can you just always say it's a review? Ajay Surya is saying, I am okay, sir, because I'll have to do lesser work, so I am okay. Very good. Okay. What about others? Anirudh is saying, we'll do it. No, you'll do it. That's fine. But I'm saying that if, let's suppose, you are restricted to check only two things in the entire set of financial statements, management has restricted you. What is the restriction? You can check only two areas. And on the top of it, management is saying that even on those areas, you will apply only those procedures which I'll tell you. You cannot apply any of your areas. So do you think as an auditor, you will be able to audit? Or can you just really say that will be an audit? Tell me. Pavan is saying, no, sir. I think same is the thought process of Vanita. Yeah, Hardik is saying independence seems to be gone. Okay. Gurminder is saying no. That's not possible. Yeah. Okay, great. Now, in such a scenario, one thing is like very, very clear to us, okay, which I can see, understand from your questions, that as far as audit is concerned, as far as review is concerned, as far as other assurance engagements are concerned, it's the discretion of the audit. It's the discretion of the auditor or the person who is checking. He decides what all things he'll check. He decides what all procedures he'll apply. In such a case, can the management decide the procedures of the practitioner or the auditor? Answer is no. That is not really possible. Yeah. Otherwise, as you just mentioned, that independence, that is sort of completely gone. Yes or no? Yes or no? So can you call such type of engagement? So let's suppose if the company asks you, ABC Limited says, let's suppose ABC Limited has called you and they are saying that you will check only PP and revenue. And even on that, you will only apply procedures, or you can say those procedures which management will suggest. So in such a case, what will you say? Let's suppose if you are the auditor, management calls you. So what will you say? You will say, okay, fine. So if you want me to work on only these two limited items and apply only those procedures which you will say, I'll do that. I'll do that. But in such a case, I'll not call it as audit. I'll not call it as review. I'll not call it as other assurance engagement. So what is going to be the implication of that? The report which I'll provide in such a scenario will not be that of audit or review or other assurance engagement. Okay, in such a case, the report will be different. Why? Because now my scope is completely different. And what is the scope of the auditor here? Or you can say the practitioner here. Scope is exactly the one which the management is saying. But this type of engagement, again, this is a type of engagement because if the management is asking you to do something, you can always do that. But what will you call this type of engagement as? You will call it as agreed upon procedures, which is very, very commonly called as AUP. AUP. Okay, great. So I can see Sai has a question. Yes, Sai. What is your question? Yes, Sai. Please go ahead with your question.
Sir, my question is, they are asking us to check revenue. Okay, but to verify the revenue, we have to know what is sales figure, whether sales figure is genuine or not. From that, we have to check revenue. So we have to see other things also. That is my clarification.
So now, are you asking this in the context of audit or review or other assurance engagement or
Other
agreed upon procedure?
this review, sir, present review issue, sir.
You are asking this in the context of audit or review? Yes or no?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. Now, if let's suppose it's an audit or a review, then tell me one thing, that can the management decide that on the complete set of financial statements, you will only check revenue and PPE?
It is interrelated with other issues, I'm telling.
No, so whether it is interrelated or not, that's a separate thing altogether. In a financial statement, there are a lot of things.
Yes, sir. Yes.
There is a purchase cost, then there are so many other assets, there are so many other liabilities, there is share capital, there are so many disclosures. Yes or no? So
Yes,
as
sir.
an auditor, if you don't check all of these things, so
Yes,
will
sir.
you become comfortable after your checking? Will
No,
you
no,
be
sir.
able to provide the reasonable assurance?
No, sir.
So if no, so what does it mean? That in such type of engagements, management cannot limit your procedures.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Management cannot decide what is it that you are going to check. Management cannot ask you the procedures that you will perform.
Yes,
So
sir.
no. So if in case the management is doing that,
Yes.
then this nature of engagement will become different. In such a case, you will call it as AUP, agreed upon audit procedures or agreed upon procedures. So what do you mean by this? So you are saying, I'll agree my procedures with you. So whatever you will ask me, I'll do that. Agreed upon means I have agreed with you. So you will tell me this is required to be checked, I'll check that. Beyond that, I'll not check anything. Let's suppose if you call me to check 5 things, I'll check 5 things. You will say that these 5 things are required to be checked in this particular manner. I'll do that. Beyond that, if there are some errors which could have been checked, which could have been found out by applying some other audit procedures, by applying some other procedures, I'll not do that. Why? Because I have not agreed with you. So
Yes,
I'll
sir.
only do something which I have agreed with.
Yes.
Okay, this is what you call as AUP, agreed upon procedures. Okay, so you can
Okay.
say it is another type of engagement. So this is another category of engagement. And if in case you have another category of engagement, so for this category, standards are available exactly similar to audit, to review. You have got standards for this type of engagement as well. Which makes sense. Yeah, because when we are saying that for every type of engagement, you should have some standards. So then why not for AUP? So that's why for AUP, again, you have got some standards in place. And what do you call those standards as? You call those standards as standards on related services. Okay, so that's the nomenclature which is provided. Okay, so standards on related services apply in those engagements which are in relation to agreed upon procedures. Okay, clear on this? So I'm just hoping that everyone is now clear as to what is an agreed upon procedures, and you are also clear about these standards which are in place. Yes, but if you have got any questions, any doubts around this, let's discuss that. Okay, so now Hardik is saying, sir, report on control operation will cover under SRS. See, there again, you will have to understand that that's an information which is other than historical. So that's why, what do you call it as? You will call it as other assurance engagement. Okay, but if let's suppose in relation to that examination, your procedures are very specified, very limited. Only those procedures you can apply which the management will ask you. Then it will become AUP, agreed upon procedures. Agreed upon procedures, you can just very simply say that the procedures are decided by the management and asked you to perform. As simple as that. Even in this case, you will provide a report. Even in this case, you will provide a report. But what is going to be the nature of your report? The nature of the report will be that you will say, okay, so 5 procedures were performed. This is my outcome. Whether it's correct, incorrect, that is how you will answer this. Yeah. Okay, so Amartha is asking, so what is the difference between SRE and SRS? See, SRE is a review, or you can say that is in relation to a review. Please remember, when it comes to a review, in the previous session we discussed that for a review, you will apply the analytical procedures and you will perform inquiries. But that will extend to entire set of financial information. There will not be any limitation of areas. And in relation to the inquiries or the analytical procedures that you will perform, are those procedures decided by the management? No, you will decide that. But when it comes to SRS, areas are going to be limited, or you can say very specific. And even on those areas, the procedures are decided by the management, which you are going to apply. So that's the difference. Okay. Clear on this? Okay, so then I think Sanatan is asking, sir, is any assurance given in case of related agreed upon procedures? No, so there is no assurance, but yes, report is provided. Okay, Hardik is asking, sir, report on control is a separate engagement it could be a separate engagement. And as we'll move further, you'll also find that this also falls within the purview of statutory audit. Yeah. As we move further, you'll get to understand this in more detail. Yeah. Then I think Angel is asking, sir, please explain this third type, standard on assurance engagement. So is this assurance engagement clear to you? Now this assurance engagement was other assurance engagement, if you remember. Other assurance engagement. So are you clear on that? Quickly, please confirm. We discussed about this. Are you clear on other assurance engagement? Yes? Okay, great. Now, in relation to those other assurance engagement, the standards which are available, what do you call them as? SAEs. SAE. As simple as that. Okay. Yeah. Now clear? Okay. So then I think Anish is asking, sir, is this report helpful for preparation of financial statements? See, none of the report is helpful for preparation. Why? Because preparation is the responsibility of the management. All of these reports have got specific purpose. What is the purpose? That the financial statements or any such information which has been prepared, whether that has been prepared in an appropriate manner or not. So that's the whole objective. Okay. Then VR is asking, sir, can we say that main point of difference between audit and AUP is audit relates to entire information and AUP relates to only specific information? Exactly. Yes, you can say that. On the top of it, you should also add that in case of agreed upon procedures, the procedures will also be specified and that too defined by the management. Okay. Yeah. So Vidushi is asking, sir, SRE is used by auditor? No. See, please remember, I can see a lot of queries coming up, which is about preparation of the financial statement. So let's try to, discuss this once again. Please remember that financial statements are not prepared by the auditor. Quickly, can you please confirm? Are the financial statements prepared by the auditor? No. So that's why when you are asking this, that are these helpful for the auditor to prepare the financial statements? The answer is clearly no. Auditor has got only one objective. That is not the preparation, but to check whether those have been prepared in an appropriate manner or not. Vijay Lakshmi, I'll come to your query. Yeah. So this is something which we are going to discuss slightly later. Okay. Let's get done with that. Then of course you should ask queries. Okay. Okay, so then I think Pawan has a question. Pawan is saying, sir, if the company owners have doubt and the audited report has been submitted already as reasonable assurance, then after that, can he use SRS? No. So that's not a resolution. Huh? That's not a resolution. Of course, if the management wants to perform some specific procedures, not because some doubts remained, but because he wanted something specifically to be checked. That is where this is generally asked for. Okay. Then Vidushi is asking, sir, but sir, it says in para 3 of SRE that practitioner assist the management in preparation and the presentation. See, that again you need to understand in the context of audit, please. See, when we are talking about assistance to the management, it doesn't mean that the assistance is provided in preparation. It is all done in a manner that wherein you are giving that comfort to the management. As an auditor, as a checker, as a person who is doing the verification, you are giving them the comfort that whatever they have prepared, whether that is correct or not. That is your role. Okay, so with that context, you should understand that. Clear on this? Okay, so then I think Joya has a query. Joya is asking, sir, can we say that AUP is dependent examination because manage? No, it's not dependent. Again, this is independent, but it's very, very specific. Okay, it's quite specific, but of course not dependent. Huh? Okay. Yeah, so I think Vidushi is clear. Banushi is asking, sir, we have to choose SRE and next year we change. See, it's not about you choosing. It all depends on your scope, which you discuss with the management, for which you will be appointed. Okay, so you will not choose your scope. Scope is something which the management will choose and for which you will be appointed by the management. Yeah. All right. So I think I've got some questions coming up. Maybe some of you have got questions, huh? Okay, so let's take your questions and then we'll take a break. Fine. So I think Sai has asked. Sai Charan has a question now. Yes, Sai Charan, please go ahead.
Sir, my question is, whenever we are doing any audit, for the same earlier similar audit, there will be some remarks made by the previous auditor. So we have to start the auditing from carry overing of earlier remarks and see that whether they are rectified or not, and we have to do like that in any audit.
Yes, of course, you'll do that. As a general approach, this is being followed. But over this, I would say a detailed discussion is going to happen. Okay, so as we move further, there are a lot of things we are going to discuss, particularly around this point. Huh?
Okay, sir.
Great. So I think Sai Charan has a question now. Yes, Sai Charan.
Sir, as we all know that auditor has been assuring the users of usually the shareholders that the financial statements has been uh, representing the true and fairly. But in this other engagement, who will
Other
be
engagement,
employing?
you're saying AUP.
Yes, AUP or other related services. Who will be the end user of that report, or is that the management as restricting the scope of auditor? That the management is the final end user, then why don't they prefer an internal auditor if 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 they have? So
Okay, great. So see, just to answer your question, please understand that there are various objectives for which checking is required to be performed. First thing which you need to understand is that when we are discussing about AUP or review, see, these are not substitute of statutory audit. As we have discussed that for every company, annual audit is mandatory. So that is something which is going to happen. Yeah. Over and above that, let's suppose during the year, management wants some specified procedures to be performed on revenue. Okay, maybe they want to strengthen their internal control. So that's why they want somebody from outside to come and check specifically those things. So that's why some of these other scope areas are also taken up by the management. Now, who are going to be the end user for that? Of course, these are meant for the management only. Clear? Then I think Rachna has a query. Yes, Rachna.
Good evening, sir. I had the same doubt as you said now, like management are the users. First of all, what is the purpose of preparing this? Yeah, as you said, for the internal checking, in the slide which where you displayed, sir, there was a line saying they don't get any assurance while checking this. So then, what is the use of even preparing this report without even getting any assurance?
All right. So see, when you read that line assurance, okay, or this term assurance, let's also try to understand the context. Huh? See, we are using this term assurance more of, you can say more of from the perspective of its technical meaning. And what is the technical meaning of assurance? That it is going to produce a report which will be similar to what you follow in case of an audit or review, wherein on the basis of such a report, some of the stakeholders, some of the external parties, some of the internal persons who are involved, they are going to rely upon. So this assurance has got a technical term attached to it. And that's why this is used in the context of three things. If you remember, I'll just take you back to that point. Okay, so we discussed that assurance are of these three types. Remember? Yeah, you call it as a review or an audit or other assurance type. Now, over and above these three types of services, another service may be asked for by the management. Let's try to understand this with the help of an example. Okay, hopefully you should get more clarity after we pick up an example for this.
Yes, sir.
Say, during the year, when the audit is being performed, okay, so let's suppose there is a company which is subject to audit. So audit is being performed. So we are not saying that audit is not performed for a particular company. Let's suppose there are some areas on which the management has been working and which remain to be a concern for the auditor. What are the areas? Inventory valuation. Let's suppose this is one area which is a concern area for the auditor. So management has been struggling. Why? Because every time they prepare the financial statements, this particular area is challenged by the auditor. A lot of errors are found in this. Okay, these are not intentional, these are unintentional, but errors are there, mistakes are made. So that's why management has been working hard to improve this. Okay, eventually they have done this. Now, of course, audit will be performed, but let's suppose management wants to check this or get this checked. So there are two ways again. One, the management can do this internally, which they would anyways do this. Yes or no? They would anyways do this. There is another way. What is the way? That they can also reach out to a third party, an external party. And they don't want to get into the audit of the financial statements. They want this third party to come up, get the comfort that whatever working management has prepared, the process they have set up, the systems they have set up, that they are now better as compared to the previous years. Why? Because then the financial statements which will be produced by the management, that will be more reliable, that will be free from errors, or you can say the errors are going to be lesser. Now, in such a case, the management wants this third party to check only inventory. Okay. And let's suppose even on inventory, management says that as around all other items were okay, even on inventory, RM means raw material happens to be one area which was a problem for us. Or maybe finished goods was one area which was a problem for us. So that's why even on inventory, we don't want to get this person to test everything. We want him to say focus only on finished goods. And on finished goods, because the management understands everything as to how this has been prepared. So that's why they have called the auditor, or you can say this third party they have called, and they have asked that first of all, you should check my policy. I am following FIFO. Okay, so you should check that the policy which we are following, is that as per the requirements of accounting standard? Number one. Second, you should check the costs which we are allocating on the inventory. Are those appropriate or not? So cost allocation you should check. Third, you should also check that if in case while valuing the inventory, in some of the cases, if NRV is lower, then is that NRV appropriately captured or not? Let's suppose these are the three areas which the management wants this third party to check. So in such a case, it's a very specified thing. As far as picking up the area is concerned, on the top of it, once the area has been picked up, the procedures are also very specified. In such a case, what do you call this type of engagement as? Tell me. Yes, everyone, tell me. What will you call this type of engagement as? Rachna? Yes, everyone? Great. So, Vijay Lakshmi is saying AUP. Yeah,
Agreed upon. Assured.
agreed upon procedures. Clear on this now?
Yes, sir.
All right, great. So I think we can take a break now. So let's take a break. I think short break should be good enough for everyone. Yeah. So 5 to 10 minutes maximum, and then we'll meet. Huh? And we are not yet done, so we'll continue with this. Okay. Yeah. All right. So we can continue with our discussion now. All right. So moving further, standards on quality control. Now, when it comes to the professional firm, okay, so you can say a firm of chartered accountants. What is that? A professional firm. Every professional firm is required to have some systems in place. Why? Because on the basis of those systems, those policies, they can just make sure that the quality in respect of various engagements that they will perform, they can achieve that. Yeah. Now let's take an example. Say for example, there is a professional firm. Say there is a professional firm, ABC and Company. Okay. Now, in this professional firm, what do you find? You find that they have got a staff of say 50 persons. Okay, that's the staff size. Out of this 50, we can say 20 are chartered accountants, means qualified. Say 30 are articles. Okay, let's suppose this is the structure of the CFO. Now, because this firm has got significant number of trainees, so should this firm have a system of providing skill set, or you can say providing training to this category of staff, so that tomorrow when they go perform the audit, they go and perform any engagement, then they can achieve the desired level of quality? What do you think? Should that system be available within the organization or not? Sai Charan is saying yes. Aisha is saying no. Can you tell me why no? Excuse me. VR is saying yes. Venkatesh is saying yes. So I think it should be there. Yes or no? Similarly, as around this firm, there should also be a system in place wherein the leaders, let's suppose in this 50, there are 3 audit partners, or say there are 3 partners who also happen to be the leaders. Yeah. So should they have a culture within the organization through which this quality criteria is established? What do you think? Whose responsibility will it be to ensure that this culture is there in the organization? Of course, it will be for the entire staff, but where should this really flow from? Where would this really flow from? From the top? Yes or no? From the top, from the leaders? Yeah. Now, for all of these things, you can just say that these are some of the examples that we have discussed. Why are these things required? So that whenever this firm performs an engagement, so we are not talking only about say audit. Let's suppose any work they do that is of utmost quality. Yeah. And for doing that, what is required on the part of the firm? To have a system in place. That system should be defined. Their policies and procedures should be clear. Okay. And what should be the policies? What should be the procedures? How should this system really function for all these professional firms which are engaged in assurance engagement? We have got another standard in place. What do you call that as? That is called as standard on quality control, SQC. Okay, so currently we have one standard on this SQC1. Now, what is this standard all about? This standard is not specific to any engagement. Please remember, all of the other standards that we were discussing, they were in relation to some type of engagement, whether that was audit, whether that was a review, whether that was AUP. Over here, we are not talking about any particular engagement. We are talking about a professional firm. For that professional firm to have systems in place, you can also say SOPs, which you get to see in case of companies. Okay, so for that to be in place, you have a guidance, or you can say you have a standard which elaborates all of those requirements which a professional firm needs to have. And what do you call that standard as? That is called as standard on quality control. Clear on this? Everyone clear on this? Yeah. All right. So now moving further. So this standard is all about the practitioners, or you can say the professional firms. Now let's quickly try to understand as to why are these standards needed. I think everyone has got a fair understanding as to what is the objective of all of these standards, but let's quickly try to touch upon these. So they will ensure that if any work is carried out, yeah, so there are some established benchmarks to improve the quality, which is, of course, the objective, to provide uniformity and to also promote uniformity. Why? Because everyone will have the same set of standards. So it's not that one firm will apply some procedure, second firm will apply some other procedures. No, that is not going to happen. Plus, the professional accountants, means all of those professionals like you, chartered accountants, they will also get equipped with professional knowledge. Where does it come from? Those standards, because that standard also is all about the guidance, and thereby it promotes audit quality, or you can say quality in relation to the work which is required to be done. And now, what are the duties in relation to these standards? First and foremost, that these are being followed. It's the duty. Yeah. And of course, as I told you, that these comes from the requirements of law, because Companies Act mandates it. So this is also something which is mandatory on the part of the professionals to follow this. And when I'm saying professional, so it's all about the professional accountants, which is all about chartered accountant, you can say, okay, in the context of chartered accountant who is performing some assurance engagement. Yeah. If let's suppose there is any particular standard which is providing some guidance, which is providing some, or you can say which requires some procedure to be performed, okay, which let's suppose the auditor is not able to perform, say for some reason there's a limitation, then what will happen? That same standard will also give the alternative. The same standard will give the alternative. Now it will become the duty of the auditor or the practitioner to follow those requirements. And if those requirements are not being followed for some limitation, which is beyond the control of, say, the management as well as the auditor, then the alternate procedures are required to be looked at and performed. Yeah. And if in case the auditor is not clear, okay, auditor is not satisfied as to the outcome of his audit procedures, he is not able to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence, or the evidence which he has obtained, he has drawn a conclusion that there are material misstatements. So what will he do? He will have to report that. He will have to report that. All of these things, once again, as I discussed, that you are going to cover in more detail. Yeah, but idea is again to just get a perspective, as to what all things you are required to follow. So this, I would say, is a brief overview of all of those things that we have discussed. Maybe later on you can just check it. Yeah. So let's come to this question now, and then I'll come to your questions. Okay. So CAP Babu is conducting audit of financial statements of Quickbuy Private Limited. He was not able to obtain external confirmations from certain debtors due to practical difficulties and peculiar circumstances. And this procedure is mandated under one of the auditing standards. So let's try to understand now what is this procedure. See, for the purposes of audit of financial statements, when you go and check debtors, are you all aware of debtors? Do you all understand debtors? Debtors, trade receivable, do you all understand? Yeah? Sure? Great. Now, when you are required to check debtors, then auditing standard require that you should obtain balance confirmation from those debtors. So what does it mean? Say there is a company, Quickbuy. Okay, so this Quickbuy. Let's suppose this has got a debtor A. This has got a debtor A. Yeah. So now what is required on the part of the auditor? That auditor will obtain confirmation independently. So auditor will not only check the records of Quickbuy, but the auditor will also reach out to A, means the debtor, independently, and will ask A to confirm the balance to the auditor. This is what you call as external confirmation from the debtor. Okay. So now in this question, it said that auditor had some practical difficulty because of which this confirmation cannot be obtained, which is possible. Let's suppose debtor is not responding. Many a times auditor may reach out to him, but the debtor is not responding. He is not responding to the auditor. So it happens. So now in such a case, let's understand as to what happened. Unable to obtain external confirmation from those debtors, he relied upon sales details of those parties, e-invoices, e-way bills, and he also traced the payments from those parties. Means whatever collection Quickbuy had received from those debtors, he checked whether those payments are credited to the bank account of Quickbuy or not. Okay, so these are the procedures which the auditor has performed. Okay, he was reasonably satisfied. He is auditor. He was reasonably satisfied with the audit evidence obtained. Means all of these procedures which he performed, 1, 2, 3, 4. So auditor was satisfied that, okay, balance confirmation could not be obtained. I can't help it, but I have performed these alternate procedures. And he was reasonably satisfied with this. Now, the question is there any other reporting duty cast upon him relating to not following a mandated procedure in any of the auditing standards? So the question is that auditing standard mandated what? That the auditor has to obtain external confirmations. Okay, so this is mandatory as far as auditing standard is concerned, that auditor had to obtain this, which he has not been able to obtain, but he performed alternate procedures, and through the alternate procedures he got satisfied. Now the question is there any other reporting duty cast upon the auditor relating to not following a mandatory procedure. Yes, over to you. Any thoughts before we really get to the solution? Yes, quickly. Anuj is saying he should report the reason for departure and also report the alternate procedure. Where does he report? In his audit report? Are you trying to say that, Anuj? Yeah. Anirudh is saying he must report disclosures for departure. Okay. Pranav is saying because there are practical difficulties, so he relied upon other documents. So that's why no such reporting is required. Rishita is saying he should mention about this scenario in his report. Vijay Lakshmi is saying there's no problem. Other details are checked. So what is the problem? Then I think NI is saying he can additionally check GST returns. No, but it's not about additional checking. It's about reporting implications. Are there any other reporting implications? Yeah. So that's the question. So now in this case, see, the auditor was required to document how the alternate procedures have been performed. Okay. So now, as far as the audit report is concerned, because the auditor is satisfied, auditor has performed alternate procedure. So that's why no reporting of such matter is required. See, this reporting would have been required if alternate procedure was not available. Or even after performing the alternate procedure, auditor was not satisfied. Then what will he do? Then he will say, I am not satisfied. So that's why I am not able to provide my opinion as regards truth and fairness. But in this case, are we into that situation? No. So auditor is quite comfortable. But auditor is also required to document the work he has done. Now, what do you mean by document? Auditor has to note down whatever he's doing. He has to prepare notes exactly similar to what you are doing. Okay. So you keep asking us, sir, notes. Yeah. And in fact, you are also preparing your own notes. So what are those notes? What do you call it as? When you are writing that, or maybe when you are typing that, or maybe when I've got this presentation in which all of these points are written. This is what you call as documentation, or which is a document. Yeah. So the same thing is required to be done by the auditor. Whatever work he has done, he is required to note it down, that this is what I've checked. This was my outcome. This was the error. This couldn't be checked. And against this, I have checked something else. Okay. Some alternate procedure has been performed by me. So this documentation is required on the part of the auditor. What is the documentation? Alternate procedures. Okay, so the alternate procedures which he has performed. So he is required to document them. And of course, the outcome, because outcome is something which is important on the part of the auditor. Yeah. So whatever is the outcome, he is required to document that as well. So this becomes the responsibility on the part of the auditor. Now you may have a question that, sir, if the balance confirmations are obtained. So let's suppose we are into a situation wherein the auditor was able to obtain the external confirmations. In such a case, will this documentation not be required? The answer is no. Even in that case, that documentation is required. See, documentation is required for everything. Whether the auditor is following the first procedure, or you can say the alternate procedure. In both the cases, it is required. Okay. But when the auditor is getting onto the alternate procedure, he'll have to document that I tried doing this, but this couldn't be achieved. What are the reasons for this? And that's why I performed alternate procedures. Yeah. So this is how he will have to document this. Clear? Clear, everyone? Anuj is asking, sir, is this document called as working paper? I think same is the question from Anuj also. Yes. So this documentation that you do, this is the work of auditor. This is the work of auditor. And this is put down on a piece of paper. Now, today, we don't work on hard copies. We are working on soft copies also. Okay. So that's why it's called as work paper. Okay. Or let me just write it here. What do you call it as? Work paper. So this is the technical term to this. So what do you mean by audit work paper? Means those documents, those files, whether those are Excel files, whether that is PPT, whether that is any software, whether that is a piece of paper, okay, whatever is the documentation criteria followed, the work which is done by the auditor, the way it is documented, and the place where it is documented, okay, that is what you call as work paper. Clear? Everyone clear on this? Any questions? Okay, Pooja has a question. Pooja is saying, sir, in order to obtain external confirmation, whether it is possible to obtain confirmation from each and every debtor, or is there any criteria? No, of course, you'll do this on a sample basis. Vibor is saying, sir, is there any government body who checks the report given by the auditor? Of course, yes. Yeah, it can be checked by anyone, because stakeholder could be anyone. It could be a government body or could be a private body. Anish is asking, sir, we need not mention that no reporting is required, only the answer above is okay. Yes. Rachana is saying, what is the reason for departure? See, the reason for departure could be anything. Say the auditor reached out to a debtor, but the debtor didn't respond. Then the auditor send a reminder, debtor didn't respond. Then what will the auditor do? Auditor will have no choice but to get on to the alternate procedures. Okay, and practically this happens quite a lot. So this is something which you very, very commonly get to see. Okay, Dilip is asking, sir, whether the work paper is kept with the auditor or provided to the client. See, all of these auditing work papers are the property of the auditor. So this is the property of the auditor. These are not shared with the client. They will always remain with the auditor. Okay, clear on this? All right, so now we can look at one case scenario. So let's move to this case study. We'll discuss this case study, and on the basis of this case study, we'll also look at some examples. Okay, yeah. So I think if you want, you can just refer this study material, page number 1.33, case study number 2. I'll also run this case study over here. Just give me a minute. So let me just go to this case study. Okay, so let's discuss this, and please remember you need to answer this, but please don't look at the solution. You need to attempt this on your own. Yeah. Me and You Private Limited has been newly incorporated. Plant of the company has recently started production with the help of funds provided by a bank for purchase and installation of machinery. Further, the company is also utilizing working capital credit facilities from the same bank for meeting its day-to-day working capital requirements, like for purchase of raw material, labor. Okay, so any of the working capital requirement. However, just within 6 months of its operations, management feels working capital funds are inadequate and situation is creating liquidity issues in the company. Management of the company has approached its bankers and requested for enhancement in the working capital credit facilities. The bank manager is insisting upon financial statements of the company for half year, along with the report providing assurance in this respect. Assurance in this respect means it's an assurance engagement. Okay. Why? Because the bank manager requires the report to be duly signed by a chartered accountant as audit is far away. Okay. Because the audit cannot be completed. Yeah. Audit will be done for the year. Now, for the time being, he wants some assurance engagement to be performed. It also requires projected financial statements for coming years, along with a report from CA providing assurance regarding these projections to consider request of the management. Okay, yeah. So everyone clear on the case scenario? Yeah, everyone clear on the case scenario? Okay, great. So now let's look at the, okay, so I think some part of the case scenario is still left. Management approaches CAP. Okay, so there is a chartered accountant P who has qualified recently and started practicing. Reports providing assurance for half-yearly results and projected financial statements are sought from this chartered accountant. Management provides necessary information and records. Assume in the above case, company only provides trial balance financial statements in draft or preliminary form along with accompanying records for the relevant half year to the chartered accountant and requests him to provide duly signed financial statements with a report for mutually agreed professional fees. Okay, so fees for the work has been agreed now. Now, on the basis of this fact pattern that we have just discussed, first question for you. Management of the company has engaged chartered accountant to issue a duly signed report for half year as referred above. Which of the following standards, if any, you believe are relevant? Standard on review engagement, standard on auditing, standard on related services. There are no standard for issuing a report in such situation. Over to you. Which out of these you think will be the relevant one? Okay, Ramesh is saying C. Then I think Sondaram is saying C. Mulu is saying C. What about others? Rishita is saying C. Very good. Niru is saying A. Okay, Priyanka is saying C. Sai is saying B. Anirudh is saying B. Bhaskar is saying C. Majority are going with C. Okay, great. Two more responses. Nitish and Dilip. They are saying it should be A. Vibhor is saying C. Now Pallavi and Subiksha are also going with A. What about others? Adishri is saying C. Okay, Manvi is saying it should be C. Okay, Afsal is saying no, sir, it should be A. Okay, Banushri is saying C. Okay, Saksha is saying it should be A. Uday is also saying A. Lata is saying C. Great. Vidushi is also saying C. Then let's look at some more responses. Tambeshwari, Pranav, they are going with C. See, in this case, what should be the correct answer? Standard on related services. It should be C. Why? Because it's something which has been agreed upon in terms of what is required to be done. Now, second question. Which of the following statement is most appropriate? Now, please remember, whenever you will have these type of questions, you will have to read all the options. Yeah. Anyways, I have told you that please don't skip the options. Please make sure you read them. I got this response from Shambhavi for the previous one. So she was also going with C. Okay, great. Now, which of the following statements is most appropriate? CAP can assist management in preparation of financial statements of the company. However, issue of report in such a case is outside the scope. CA can assist the management in preparation of financial statements and he can also issue an audit report. CA can assist the management in preparation of financial statements of the company and he can issue a compilation report in this respect. Responsibility of preparation of the financial statement is of the company's management. CA cannot assist the management in preparation of the financial statements. However, he can issue a review report. However, he can issue a review report. Over to you. Over to you. Yes, quickly. Over to you. Bhaskar is saying D. Pranav is saying A. Saksha is saying D. Yeah, I can see mixed responses coming in. So C, I think Dilip is going with C. Then I think Pallavi is going with C. Okay, great. Pranav is going with C. Okay, then Subiksha is going with C. Ramya, Rishita, they are going with C. Ria is going with D. Vidushi is saying it should be A. All right, so let's try to look at the answer. It should be C in the context if in case he is doing the compilation. But please remember, if he's not preparing the financial statements and if he is not assisting the management, then he can issue a review report. But I think in the context of the scope which has been agreed upon, as we discussed, that review is something which is not going to be possible. Okay, so let's look at the next question, question number 3. Question number 3. In the above said scenario, for issuance of signed financial statements for half year, as discussed above, identify the most appropriate statement. Standard on quality control is not applicable, as chartered accountant cannot issue audit report. Standard on quality control is not applicable, as chartered accountant cannot issue review report. Standard on quality control is applicable. Standard on quality control, D option, is not applicable. So I think 3 options are saying SQC1 is not applicable. 1 option is saying SQC is applicable. Okay, what about you? Quickly. Pallavi is saying it should be C. I think this is quite clear to everyone. I'm just hoping that everyone will give the same answer. Great. Niveta, Malu, VR, Hasi, Rachna, they are all going with C. I think this is quite clear. Yeah. I'm just hoping there's absolute clarity. SQC. See, standard on quality control is what? That's the standard which talks about quality control procedures, policies, procedures, which the chartered accountant professional firm needs to have in place. So do we have any exception for that? No. So that's why option A, B, D are not possible. So what should be the right answer? Option number C. Option number C. Okay. I think Amit Biswas has also answered the same thing. Great. Excuse me. All right. So now moving on to question number 4. Okay. Banker of a company has also requested for projected financial statements for coming years, along with a report from chartered accountant regarding these projections to consider request of management. Which of the following standards will be relevant in such a situation? SRE, no standard, SRS, or D, standard on assurance engagement? I am just hoping that over this you will have absolute clarity, because we have spent a lot of time on this. Very good, Sutrita. She is saying D. Okay, then I am missing out on responses. A lot of responses I have received. Vibhor is saying D. Okay, Bhaskar is saying D. Anudipa is saying D. Hardik is saying D. Rojiling is saying D. Anish is saying it should be D. Okay, great. I think over this, once again, there is absolute clarity to everyone. Oh, Sunil is saying C. Why C? I think you should be very, very clear on this. It has to be D only. Why? Because over here, what is it that is going to be examined? Projected financial statements, prospective financial information. So this will be other assurance engagement. Hardik, I'll come to your query. Huh? Okay. All right. So let's look at this last question. Question number 5. Suppose CA also accepts work of issuing projected financial statements with a report to be signed by him. Management has projected turnover of rupees 100 crore for the next year, rupees 150 crore and 200 crore for the following years respectively, as compared to present turnover of rupees 25 crore in the current half year. Identify the most appropriate situation. Okay, most appropriate statement in such a situation. CA has to satisfy himself regarding arithmetical accuracy. CA has to satisfy himself regarding reasonableness of assumptions underlying projected turnover and its consistency with actuals. CA has to satisfy himself regarding arithmetical accuracy along with proper presentation to the banker. CA has to satisfy himself regarding reasonableness of assumptions underlying projected turnover, its consistency with actuals, disclosures, and the presentation. Which out of these? Oh, I think I opened the solution also, but I'm just hoping that you will apply your thoughts and accordingly answer. Yes, over to you. What do you think will be the right answer? And can you tell me the reason? Okay, great. Everyone is saying D. Can you also tell me the rationale why it should be D? Why not others? Because you have sort of, similar type of options available. Because Vibhor is saying that D is the one which will be the most satisfactory after the procedures are performed. Okay. Hardik is saying because it will involve disclosure of all material assumptions. I'm just understanding that you're trying to say coverage of all required procedures. Okay, because Pallavi is saying because the disclosure is required, of course. So that is also going to be one of the aspect. Okay. Then Vijay Lakshmi is saying word of report. Okay. Ramesh is saying actual disclosures and projections. So all of these aspects will be fully taken care of. Atira is saying it has to be matching with actual figures. Yes, of course. So all of these things are which are required to be looked at by the practitioner. Okay, so we are discussing in the context of the auditor or a practitioner. So that's how we should always approach this. Okay, yeah. So I think with this, we have just tried to discuss some of the objectives which are there in relation to audit, what this audit is all about, what all auditing standards or what all engagement standards we have in place, yeah, and what all advantages or disadvantages that we have. But please remember that even though we have just concluded this chapter 1, it's just the beginning, because audit is all about getting into say greater details of all of those things that we have just discussed. So you can just say that as around audit, a lot of things that we have discussed in some of our sessions so far is going to be discussed in greater detail as we move further. Fine. Yeah, but before I really move to the next topic, as the time permit, we'll see. Let's pick up your questions. Okay, and once we are through with your questions, then we'll just see as to whether we can pick up the next topic or not. Yes, over to you. Yeah, we can just move on to your questions, doubts now. So I can see this query coming from Soundarya. So it says, can a company who is not mandatory doing audit? Okay, so I think the question is that if the audit is not mandatory for an entity, can such an entity ask the practitioner or the auditor to do SRE, SAE, SRS? Of course, yes. Of course. Even if for a company or an entity where audit is mandatory, this can be performed. Okay. Then I think Afzal is asking about all of these presentations. So I understand that these presentations should have already been uploaded. If not, this will be done very soon. It should be done. So this will be all available to you. Don't worry. Then Yashashwini has a question. So what is the deadline of preparing an audit report by the auditor usually in an year? See, usually for the financial statements, the deadline is 6 months from the end of the financial year, except for listed companies, of course. because that is the period within which this AGM has to be conducted. So before that, audit has to be completed. Before that, this work has to get completed. So you can just say that this 6 months is the window which is available for the company to prepare the financial statements as well as get the audit done. Okay. Jinky is asking, sir, what do you mean by practitioner? So practitioner, you can say, is the chartered accountant or the third party who will be hired, maybe to perform review or to
Recording
perform
stopped.
some other procedure.
Recording in progress.
Okay, so that is the context. Okay. Then Sai is asking, sir, in related services engagement, can the auditor assist in preparation of the financial statements? When you are talking about related services engagement, related services engagement is all about checking. And in fact, all of these things that we have been discussing is all about checking, examining. We are not talking about preparation. Huh? So you have to be mindful of that. Clear on that? Yeah. So please keep that in mind always. Manvi is saying, sir, can you please explain standard on quality control? Once again, sure. So let me just go to that working only that we discussed around the quality control. Okay, so now in relation to quality control, we discussed that when it comes to a professional firm, so let's suppose there is a CA firm. Okay, this CA firm should have its SOPs, means it should have its policies, procedures. Okay, it should have a manual as to how the work will be done, how the staff will be trained, what is the role of the leaders, how are the leaders taking care of quality in the organization. Yeah, as around the engagement, what are the procedures they will follow. There are a lot of things which a firm is required to look into. And for doing that, all of these firms should have a manual in place, or you can say a document in place, which is called as SQC 1, which talks about policies and procedures which the firm should have in place. So we are talking about a firm here. We are not talking about an engagement, which the firm should have in place so that whenever this firm will perform any engagement. So let's suppose tomorrow this CA firm is required to audit, say, financial statements of P Limited. Now tomorrow, if this firm has to perform this audit, so this audit will meet the quality criteria. So for doing that, the systems, the procedures which are developed internally, for doing that, you have one standard in place. Okay, so every professional firm which is involved in assurance work, they need to follow this standard on quality control 1, which is called as SQC 1. Clear on this? Yeah. All right, so then I think I've got some queries from some of you who have raised hands. Okay, sure. So before I get on to some more queries, yes, please go ahead. I think Hardik, you have a query. Yes, please go ahead.
Sir, can you please explain question 2 of case study?
Question 2 of case study. Okay, so let me just go to this case study now. Okay, so this question requires that which of the following statements is the most appropriate one. Okay, so you have to choose the most appropriate out of these. So in these statements, CA is required to prepare financial statements. Okay, so if you look at the first, CA is required to prepare financial statements, and then he is required to issue a report. Can he do that? Answer is no. Second,
No,
he is required to prepare financial statements, then do audit. Can he do that? Again, no.
No, sir.
If you look at D, he is required to, he is not required to prepare the financial information. He'll also not be involved in assisting the management in preparation, but he is required to issue the review report. So now, if you look at the case scenario that we have discussed above, does the scope involve review? We discussed
No.
the scope doesn't involve review. So that's why this option is again not
Yes, sir.
possible.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
So where do we go? We go to C. And C talks about preparation, wherein the auditor will only, or you can say the third party. Okay, so it's not an auditor actually, it's the consultant or the chartered accountant. So he will only give the compilation report. So he'll just say that this is how I have prepared it. So that's it. Clear?
Okay, sir. Yes,
Sir,
sir.
one clarification,
And
sir.
sir,
Sai Kiran.
sir, one more doubt.
Yes, Hardik, please go ahead.
Sir, that the qualities of auditor.
Okay, just a minute. Yeah, I understand you had one more query. Let me just go to the presentation once again. So I think you'll have to repeat your question. Let me just go to that slide
Sir.
once.
Yes,
Just
sir.
a minute. Okay, yes. So I understand you have some query here.
Yes, sir. Sir, there is a line written, an exhaustive knowledge of accounting in all its branches in the sine qua non of a practice of auditing. Sir,
Okay,
what is
great.
this?
Yeah, so an exhaustive knowledge of accounting in all its branches. What do you mean by this line? Thorough knowledge of accounting. See, if you talk about a chartered accountant today, for a chartered accountant, two things are must. What are those two things? One is accounting and second is audit. Because he is considered to be an expert of these two areas for sure. So you can say this is the basic level of expectation which is considered by any other person. Yeah, so that's why it says exhaustive knowledge of accounting in all respects is the sine qua non of practice of auditing. Means it's given, it's something which is expected, bare minimum, which is mandatory. So it is, so whenever you meet a chartered accountant, you will always expect that he should be an expert on accounting, okay, and obviously on auditing. Understood?
Okay, sir. Thank you,
All
sir.
right, great. So I
Sir.
think
Sir, Sai Kiran.
just a minute. I think we can go one by one, please. Maybe
Sai Kiran, sir.
yes, Vinuta. Yes, Vinita, I understand you have a query. Okay, no worries. I think Ajay Surya has a query. Ajay Surya, you have a query?
Sir, Sai Kiran.
Yes, Sai Kiran, please go ahead.
Sir, my query is that auditor has to take creditors, debtors balance confirmation. For that work, whether he can take management support, sir, or he has to do solely.
No, so management support, what do you mean by management support?
For preparing acknowledgement, balance confirmation letters, dispatching it like that.
See, as far as their preparation is concerned, dispatch is concerned, all of these things are the responsibilities of the auditor. So this has
Okay.
to be done by the auditor always. Yeah, so auditor should not really reach out to the management and get it done. Okay, because if you are engaged to do something, of course it should be you who should be doing that. Understood? Yeah.
Okay, sir.
All right. So I understand. Bhavna, you have a query? Yes, Bhavna. Yes, Bhavna. Okay. So in the meantime, I think Amit has a query. Amit is asking, sir, can you please describe the purpose of departure and the relevance also? So I think you are asking this in the context of departure from an audit procedure. See, as such, there is no purpose of departure. Why? Because auditor should not depart from his audit procedures. But at times, auditor may not be able to perform a particular audit procedure. For example, we discussed balance confirmation. Let's suppose you are the auditor of a company, okay, and there's a debtor XYZ. Now you are reaching out to him. So how do you reach out? You will send the balance confirmation request, but that debtor doesn't respond. then what will you do? You will send 1 reminder, 2 reminder, 3 reminders. That's the maximum you can do. You cannot just keep waiting, or you will not force the debtor. You will not go to his place, ask him to, or maybe force him to confirm. So what will then happen? It's a departure, okay? But it's something which is forced upon on your part. Why? Because you can't follow that. There's no choice. So that's why you'll have to get onto the alternate procedures. Okay, Amit? Then I think yes, Bhavna has a query. Yes, Bhavna.
Sir,
Vinita, yes, please go ahead.
yes, sir, can I explain standards assurance engagements?
Sorry, your voice is not clear.
Standards on assurance engagement, sir. Once explain, sir.
Engagement standards, you're saying?
Yeah, sir. Assurance engagements. Yeah.
Assurance engagement.
Assurance engagements.
Yeah,
Okay, you mean to say other assurance engagements, is it?
yeah, sir. Yeah.
All right. So see, as far as the engagements are concerned, we discussed it could either be audit or review.
Yeah.
So when it comes to audit or review, that is something you'll do when the historical financial information is required to be checked.
Okay.
But let's suppose if some future information is required to be checked. What do you mean by future information? Let's suppose projections are required to be checked. So can you say that projections are historical financial information? No. No. So in such a case, what would it become? It would become other assurance engagement. Okay.
Sir, what is the difference, sir? Assurance engagement and review engagement?
See, assurance engagement and review engagement, they are same because both of them are assurance. But as far as their difference is concerned, I just explained that review you will do for historical financial information.
Okay, sir.
But if the checking of historical financial information is not required, but let's suppose projections is required, then can you do review? No. Then you will call it as other assurance.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Okay.
Sure.
Sir, no, sir, it's no notes how to get, sir. Your notes.
See, these should be uploaded. I'll just request maybe the concerned person to do that. It should have been done by now. I'm not sure, but I'll just check, find out. This will be uploaded.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Great.
Good evening, sir.
Yes.
Sir, I have a doubt.
Okay, yes, please go ahead.
Sir, a company trade in environment-friendly product.
Okay.
But after some time, government realized that company trade in the product which are not environment-friendly.
Okay.
For this, government impose monetary penalty on the company.
See, I think you are talking about some legal implications which could arise due to this.
Yes, sir.
Please understand, it's a completely different subject altogether. Okay, when it comes to environment, or you can say some of the compliances which the company has to follow. So, of course, if your question is that could the penalties be imposed on the company, the answer is of course yes, that can be imposed on the company. Does it really come from the requirements of audit? No, it doesn't come from the requirement of audit. Why? Because there is a law which the company is required to follow, and there is a non-compliance on the company. Why? Because they have not followed some of the legal requirements. Now, what could be the legal implication? That you'll have to assess in the context of those legal requirements. Okay?
Okay, thank you, sir.
Sure.
How do the inherent limitations affect the auditor ability to detect fraud and errors, sir?
See, to a certain extent, we can say that they can have an impact, but not to a great extent. Because, of course, audit has got some limitations. And one of the very, very common example for which we have been, discussing repeatedly happens to be the sample selection. Okay, or you can say sample checking, wherein we have been discussing that auditor will not be checking everything on a 100% basis. So that's why some of the items which are not forming part of the sample may have errors. Okay, so that could impose a limitation, and because of which some errors may continue to remain in the data or in the financial information or in the financial statements which have been audited. Okay, so that can be the impact. But again, there are ways to manage this. There are ways to cover up this. As we'll move further, okay, in the subsequent chapters, you will get to know in more detail what are the ways through which some of these things are also taken care of. I'm not trying to say that the auditor is able to give the absolute assurance, but I'm saying within the purview of this reasonable assurance, there are a lot of things which the auditor will do through which some of these things are generally taken care of. Okay.
Hello,
Yes.
sir. Please
What
standard of quality control again.
Standard on quality control, you are asking?
Yes, sir.
See, standard of quality control defines the policies or the procedures which a professional firm, for example, there's a firm of chartered accountant. So what all policies and procedures they should have in place? Okay, it defines that, it provides a guidance on that, it outlines that these are some of the things which a professional firm should follow. Understood?
Okay, sir.
Great. So I think your queries can continue, and I'll just continue with your queries now. But some of you who don't have any queries, I think we can just close our discussion. And if you just want to move out, you can just feel free. Huh? Thanks to everyone for your time and for your wonderful participation. But I will continue discussing our queries. Huh?
Good day, sir.
Yes.
This is Kumaresan from Chennai.
Yes.
As you said, for getting a balance confirmation, that is auditor responsibility. Whereas
Yes.
in practically, I am working on a finance manager of the company, but the auditors always insisting us to get a confirmation from management side.
Okay, so what's the question?
As you said, sir, getting a data's confirmation from that is from auditor's responsibility.
No, so what's the question? Huh? So whatever you have said so far is a fact.
The question is auditors insisting management to get a confirmation from data side. Is it a correct way, or I can say that it is our auditor responsibility to get the confirmation?
See, there are two ways to it. Huh? One thing that we have discussed was all about obtaining external confirmations. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Wherein auditor will reach out to the third party, say the debtor, and ask for a confirmation.
Yes.
Where does this requirement come from? It comes from the requirements of auditing standards. Okay, so of course, auditor will want to do this. Or you can say it's a mandate on the part of auditor to do that. Coming to your point that should this also become the responsibility of the management? The answer is yes. Why? Because please try to understand that debtors form part of the financial statements. Does it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, if the debtors are included in the financial statements, then the management should also have an appropriate basis of recording that. There will, of course, be invoices, collections, a lot of things you can say will be there. But management should also have their internal control systems in place through which they are obtaining the confirmations, they are doing the reconciliations. Yeah. So now auditor also has a responsibility to check whether the management is taking care of all of these policies and procedures internally or not. So I would say both the things will be performed by the auditor. One, the auditor will also ask the management as to what is it that they have done. And show it to them that which all confirmations you have obtained during the year and show me. Yes. On the top of it, he will also reach out to those parties externally, independently, and ask for the confirmations. But if you are saying that the auditor is reaching out to the management that please go and obtain confirmation on my behalf, or maybe you obtain the confirmation, so that could be because of the reasons that auditor has reached out to the third party. See, over there, some sort of involvement of the management will always be required. Why? Because first of all, auditor will obtain the permission from the management that I need to reach out to these parties. That's why management will sign that confirmation letter, which auditor will send independently. But tomorrow, if let's suppose there's a debtor who is not responding, then the auditor may request the management to reach out to that debtor to respond to the auditor directly. Okay, so that is absolutely required, because that's how all of these things can be coordinated. So it's all about getting the things coordinated. So there is absolutely no problem. In fact, that is something which the auditor will always want to do.
So which means it's a mutual responsibility, I can take it.
Yes, of course, it's a mutual responsibility, but the communication has to be independent.
Okay.
So auditor cannot say that you go and take the confirmation and give it to me.
Okay.
Understood? The confirmation
Yes,
has to reach to the auditor independently. But if in case the debtor is not responding, he can always ask the management that please ask him to respond.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes.
So let's suppose if you are my if let's suppose you are my party, okay, and I am the management, and you are not responding to my auditor, then I can always reach out that my auditor is requesting for something. Why don't you respond to him?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that is something which the management can always do, and there's absolutely no problem in doing that.
Yes.
Understood?
Yes, sir. Got it.
All right. Okay.
Okay, thank
All right.
Yes.
Sure.
Sir.
So I think I have one more question coming up. So this is coming from Pallavi. So Pallavi is saying, sir, can you please explain why sufficient appropriate information is necessary to be obtained if the company is providing only limited information? See, for the limited information, for the limited, actually that is not limited information, that is limited assurance which the reviewer will provide. Understood? So if the review is being performed, if the report is going to be there, which the auditor will sign, so will the auditor want to check something or not? And in the previous sessions, we have discussed that he'll not be doing the test of detail, but of course, he'll doing the inquiries, he'll do the substantive analytical procedures, which you'll get to know in more detail as to, how all of these procedures are performed. Now, for doing that, at least for these procedures, sufficiency should be there, appropriateness should be there. So that is what you mean by sufficient and appropriate audit evidence in the context of those procedures. So we are not saying that these evidence should be in the context of audit. We are saying this should be in the context of review. That is limited to review. So that should be there. If that is not obtained, then what is it that the auditor will get? Or maybe the reviewer will get? He will not get anything. Okay. All right. So any more questions?
Sir.
Yes, yes, Satish, please go ahead.
What is difference between good temper and clearness?
Sorry?
What is the difference between good temper and clearness, clear-headedness?
See, clear-headedness means that auditor is clear in terms of his thoughts. What is required to be done? Okay, let's suppose if you are discussing something with me today, okay, you want a clarity on this concept or not? That's why we have asked this question. Once you understand this, will you be very clear in terms of this particular topic? You will be absolutely clear as to how this topic is required to be applied. Yes or no? Yes or no? Now,
yes,
whenever any task is required to be performed, if you don't have the clarity, so will you be able to do that task in an appropriate manner? Tell me. Tell me. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's why clear-headedness is required. Means you have to be very, very clear in terms of what you are required to do. Good temper is all about dealing with the people. So it's a human quality. Means when you are dealing with the people, you should not be short-tempered. You should not be just shouting with them. Okay, you should not be just getting angry. Maybe if say you are the partner and there's an intern who is asking a lot of questions. Why? Because they are new to the organization. They are not familiar with the audit procedures. Or maybe you go to the client place. Client is not providing the information. You start fighting. Okay, so you should be having this human quality of getting the information obtained. Yeah.
Sir, hello.
Yes.
Sir, when audit documentation is required.
Sorry, your voice is not clear.
Sir.
I can't hear you.
Documentation is required. Audit documentation when required, sir.
Sorry, again, I'm missing you. Huh?
Sir, when audit documentation is required, sir?
See, during the course of audit. So as the audit work will go, this documentation has to be there. In fact, on this documentation, you'll have a detailed discussion. Huh? But please remember that whatever you'll do, you'll document that. And you'll not wait for a time to come when you'll document. As and when you'll do, you'll document. For example, you are taking this class now. Okay. So you are preparing the notes. Yes or no? Or you are taking down some points. Yes or no? So that is what you call as documentation. You will not wait for, say, maybe end of September when you will document some of these things. Understood? So that's how you will do the audit documentation also. Clear, Satish, on this?
Hello, sir. I'm audible.
Yes, you are audible, Ajay.
Sir, can you suggest most appropriate way to make notes for auditing subject? Can you please suggest?
See, there's no most appropriate. I would say something which suits you becomes the most appropriate. If you want to just take down the notes, maybe on the piece of paper, you can just keep preparing some short notes. You can do that. Otherwise, this presentation will also be available to you, which is quite summarized in terms of your revision. You can do that. Okay. So what is the objective? That at the time of exam, you will need some summaries, or maybe, uh, that detailed book you'll not be able to read. So I think you should have something which is easy to read and quick to read. So that should be your approach. So whichever way you feel comfortable, that's how you should approach it. Okay, and that's the approach which we have also considered, and that's why this presentation, when you'll get, or maybe you are watching this, you'll see that each and everything has not been captured as it is. Okay, or talks about some of the bullet points or some of the key points which you can just go refer later on, and that's how you can just revise it. So that should be your approach of taking down the notes every time you take it, whether you do it yourself or you use this material which is provided, whichever way. So it's again comes down to you as to how do you want to take it, or which is the most comfortable mechanism, or which is the most comfortable, you can say, system which works for you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, so I think if we are done, we can just close our discussion. Yeah. All right, so thanks once again, everyone, for your time and for your wonderful participation. Thanks so much. Yes. All right, good night. Thanks.